The huge meeting room of the Galactic Council fell quiet as the big screen showed another star system turning red. The Vordax were winning again. These bug-like aliens had been taking over the galaxy bit by bit for 30 years. No one could stop them. William Carter sat at the back of the room. He was Earth's voice on the council. Most alien leaders ignored him. To them, humans were too new to space travel. Earth had only figured out how to go faster than light 15 years ago. The older alien races thought humans were not worth noticing. The scary Vordax probably felt the same way. "The Vordax ships have changed direction," said Admiral Zixlar, a blue-skinned alien with 4 arms. "They are now heading toward the Sol system." The room filled with whispers. Carter just nodded calmly. This made the aliens around him nervous. "We are sorry to tell you that we cannot send ships to help protect Earth," said High Chancellor Vorn, the oldest member of the Council. "We need all our forces to defend our main worlds." Carter stood up slowly. He straightened his plain blue uniform and looked around the room. "Earth does not need help," he said. "We only ask that Council members come to watch what we will do." Many aliens laughed at this. "You have no fleet," said Admiral Zixlar with a mocking tone. "Your simple ships would be destroyed by even the smallest Vordax scout." Carter smiled. "We have 1 ship. That will be enough." Back on Earth, people were not panicking. For 25 years, they had been getting ready. Ever since deep space listening posts had picked up strange signals that scientists figured out came from the Vordax. The world's nations had put aside their differences. They pooled their best minds and resources. The result was now hanging in orbit above Earth. The USS Defiance was huge, 2 kilometers long. Its black hull seemed to swallow light rather than reflect it. It was bigger than any ship humans had built before, but still much smaller than the giant Vordax ships coming toward Earth. Captain Susan Rivera walked across the bridge of the Defiance. Her crew worked quickly and quietly at their stations. They had trained for this moment for years. "Vordax fleet will reach Jupiter in 6 hours, said Lieutenant Eric Johnson from his screen at the front of the bridge. "We can see 17 big ships," Susan nodded. "Send word to Earth Command. Tell them we are moving to intercept as planned." On a special deck made for visitors, several alien representatives from the Council watched with a mix of pity and interest. Ambassador Peter Walsh was showing them around. He was a tall man with gray hair who spoke in a calm voice. "Your bravery is impressive but misguided," said Mila Zor, an alien with silver skin. "We have studied the Vordax for many years. Their ships work together as one mind. No normal weapons can get through their shields." Walsh smiled. "Who said we use normal weapons?" Deep inside the Defiance, Chief Engineer Olivia Martinez made final checks on the ship's special core. It looked like a small storm of light trapped inside glass circles. No other race in the galaxy had technology like this, not because it was more advanced, but because it was completely different. "Different problems need different answers," Olivia said to herself as she finished her work. The Vordax fleet moved in perfect formation. Their ships formed shapes that changed and moved together like they were parts of one big creature. They spotted the lone human ship coming toward them and adjusted their pattern. Captain Rivera opened a channel. "This is Captain Susan Rivera. Of the Earthship Defiance, you are entering restricted space. Turn back now." The answer came as a mental attack that pushed against special barriers throughout the ship. The Vordax didn't talk with words. They forced their thoughts into other beings' minds. This was one reason why other races were so afraid of them. "Give me a normal translation," Rivera ordered. The ship's computer changed the mental attack into words. "We are Vordax. You will be eaten. Fighting is pointless." "Funny," Rivera said, nodding to Eric. "We feel the same way about you." The Defiance suddenly sped up. Its new engines let it move in ways that seemed impossible. It slipped between the perfectly arranged Vordax ships, breaking up their pattern. The Vordax reacted right away. Their living metal hulls changed shape to form weapons. Energy beams shot out, hitting the Defiance directly. On the visitor deck, the alien ambassadors held their breath. They expected to see the human ship blow up. Instead, the Defiance's hull seemed to drink in the energy. The dark material rippled, slightly before becoming still again. First demonstration complete. announced Rivera over the speakers. See how their attacks work together? They adapt as a group. The Defiance suddenly sent out a pulse of energy that normal sensors couldn't see. The nearest Vordax ship shook violently. Its living metal surface turned hard like crystal and began to crack. When fighting a hive mind, Rivera continued calmly, the simplest answer is to create a disruption they cannot adapt to, because it attacks the very nature of their connection. The Vordax fleet fell into chaos. Ships crashed into each other as their perfect formation fell apart. Some fired wildly while others just floated in space, doing nothing. What are we seeing? Asked the silver-skinned ambassador in shock. Olivia Martinez joined them on the deck. Her face was serious but satisfied. Quantum entanglement disruption, she explained. The Vordax use quantum fields to keep their hive mind working across space. We've been studying them for decades, ever since our probes first picked up their signals. The Defiance moved carefully through the confused fleet, firing precise pulses at each ship. The huge vessels, now working alone without their shared mind, fought back with growing desperation. You knew they were coming, realized Ambassador Zor. Before you even joined the council. Ambassador Walsh nodded. We detected their communications 25 years ago. We've been getting ready ever since. But why keep this ability secret from the council? Asked another visitor. Walsh's face hardened. Because we looked at the council's defense records. For 800 years you've faced threats by forming committees talking about responses, and finally sacrificing outer worlds to protect inner ones. Earth would have been considered not worth saving. On the bridge, Captain Rivera directed careful strikes against the now vulnerable Vordax fleet. One by one, the mighty ships were left floating helplessly, their organic technology frozen and dead. Last target neutralized, reported Lieutenant Johnson. Vordax fleet is disabled. Rivera nodded, then opened a channel to Earth. Command, this is Defiance. Phase 1 complete. All Vordax ships have been neutralized without destruction. Requesting containment teams to secure vessels for study. She turned to her crew, who were watching her with wide eyes. They had trained for this moment, but actually living it was something else entirely. Well done, everyone, she said with a small smile. Phase 1 is complete, but our work is just beginning. The galaxy is about to change forever. News of what happened near Jupiter spread fast. The Galactic Council members who had watched could hardly believe what they had seen. The feared Vordax fleet, beaten by a single human ship. Captain Susan Rivera stood in the Defiance's meeting room. On the large screen, the faces of Earth's leaders looked back at her. The containment teams have secured 3 Vordax ships for study, she reported. The others are being watched carefully. Their hive mind connection is still broken. Excellent work, Captain, said President Alan Foster. But this is just the beginning. Our long-range sensors show 2 more Vordax fleets changing course. They're heading toward Earth now. Susan nodded. She had expected this. How long do we have? 4 days for the closest fleet. 6 for the other one. The Defiance will be ready, Susan promised. But I suggest we activate the defense network now and release information about our quantum disruptors to our allies. The president looked to his advisors, who nodded in agreement. Approved, he said. Ambassador Carter is already addressing the full Galactic Council. It's time the galaxy knew what humanity can do. On the captured Vordax ship, Chief Engineer Olivia Martinez moved carefully through the strange corridors. The walls looked like metal, but felt warm to the touch. In some places, they seemed to pulse slightly. Amazing, she said to her team. Their ships are partly alive. The metal is grown, not built. Lieutenant Eric Johnson scanned the walls with a special device. The quantum field is still present but dormant, like it's sleeping. Good, said Olivia. Keep the disruptors running. We don't want this thing waking up while we're inside it. They reached what seemed to be the control center. Instead of chairs and screens, there were pod-like structures where the Vordax operators would connect their bodies directly to the ship. Look at this, called one of the engineers. He pointed to a star map glowing on a curved wall. I think this shows all their fleet positions. Olivia studied the map. There are more of them than we thought. Much more. Eric frowned. Can the Defiance handle that many? The Defiance won't have to, Olivia said. Not alone, anyway. Back at the Galactic Council, Ambassador William Carter stood calmly as the chamber erupted in noisy debate. Some representatives were angry, others afraid, and a few seemed impressed. You had this technology all along and kept it secret, shouted Admiral Zixlar, while other worlds burned. We developed this technology to defend Earth, Carter replied evenly. We had no obligation to share military secrets with a council that considered us primitives. High Chancellor Vorn raised his hands for quiet. What matters now is what Earth plans to do next. The Vordax will not take this defeat lightly. Carter nodded. We are aware. 2 more Vordax fleets are already on their way to our system. But Earth is prepared to share our quantum disruption technology with all council races who wish to defend themselves. The room went quiet at this offer. In exchange for what? Asked an ambassador from the back. In exchange for nothing, said Carter. The Vordax are a threat to all sentient life. We believe every world has the right to defend itself. Ambassador Mila Zor stepped forward. My world was among the first to detect the Vordax centuries ago. We tried to warn the Council but were dismissed as alarmists. Now my home system sits at the edge of Vordax space. We would gratefully accept Earth's help. One by one, other representatives stood to join her. Soon more than half the Council had accepted the offer. Admiral Zixlar was the last to stand. The Thandorian fleet has lost many ships to the Vordax. I still think you should have shared this sooner, but we will not refuse help now. Carter smiled slightly. Earth has prepared defense packages for each of your worlds. They include the plans for building quantum disruptors and trained human teams to help install them. The first shipments are already on their way. On the Defiance, Captain Rivera received an urgent message from Earth Command. Captain, we've detected unusual activity from the disabled Vordax ships. They appear to be attempting to rebuild their quantum connections through a different method. Susan frowned. How is that possible? The disruptors should prevent any quantum communication. They're using something else. Perhaps standard radio waves modified to carry quantum signatures. Susan turned to her tactical officer. Full scan of all frequencies. Find whatever they're using and block it. The officer worked quickly. Found it, Captain. It's in a range. We don't normally monitor. Blocking now. On the main screen, Susan could see the disabled Vordax ships. One of them had started to glow slightly along its hull. Target that ship with a focused disruptor pulse, she ordered. Double strength. The Defiance fired a beam of invisible energy. The glowing Vordax ship shuddered, and the light faded. They're adapting faster than we expected, Susan said. We need to learn more about how they think. She opened a channel to the research team on the captured ship. Olivia, we need to speed things up. The Vordax are trying to find ways around our disruption. We've made a discovery, Captain, Olivia replied. Their ships contain biological components that work like brains. They store memories, even when the hive mind is disrupted. Can we access those memories? We're trying, but there's something else. These star maps show at least 30 more fleets than we knew about. And look at this pattern of movement. The bridge crew watched as Olivia sent the map to their screen. The Vordax fleets were moving in a huge circle around their territory, like they were protecting something. What's at the center? Susan asked. We don't know yet, but whatever it is, I think it's important to them. Susan made a quick decision. Send all this data to Earth Command and the Council allies. I'm going to take the Defiance to the edge of Vordax space. We need to see what the next fleet is doing. The Defiance moved swiftly through the solar system, passing Mars and heading for the jump point that would take them beyond Earth's territory. Ambassador Peter Walsh joined Susan on the bridge. Earth Command approved your plan, but they want you to know that the defense network is only 60% complete. If you engage the Vordax fleet now, we might not have backup, Susan finished for him. Understood. But we need to know what we're facing. As the Defiance prepared to jump, Susan looked at her crew. They were focused and ready, but she could See the tension in their faces. We've shown the galaxy that humanity can stand against the Vordax, she said. Now we need to show ourselves that it wasn't just luck. The next battle will be harder. The Vordax know about us now. They'll be ready. The ship's engines hummed as the jump sequence began. But so are we, Susan said quietly. So are we. A flash of light. The Defiance disappeared from Earth's solar system, jumping toward the approaching Vordax fleet and whatever secrets waited at the center of their territory. The Defiance emerged from its jump on the edge of Vordax space. The ship's sensors immediately began scanning the area around them. Passive scans only, ordered Captain Susan Rivera. We don't want to announce our presence yet. Lieutenant Eric Johnson worked at his console. No Vordax ships in the immediate area, Captain, but I'm picking up strange energy readings from the fourth planet in this system. Susan studied the readings on her screen. That doesn't match any known Vordax technology. It doesn't match any known technology at all, said Eric. It's like nothing we've ever seen before. Susan made a quick decision. Take us in closer, but stay alert. Keep the quantum disruptors ready. The Defiance moved silently toward the fourth planet. It was a small, rocky world with a thin atmosphere. From orbit, they could see structures on the surface, huge black towers that seemed to reach into the sky. Those aren't Vordax designs, noted Ambassador Peter Walsh, who had joined them on the bridge. The Vordax build round, organic structures. These are angular, artificial. Susan nodded. Something else is going on here. Prepare a scout team. I want a closer look. Down in the launch bay, Olivia Martinez checked her environment suit one last time. She would lead the scout team to the planet's surface. Remember, we're just looking, she told her team. We get in, gather data, and get out. No samples, no contact. The small scout ship left the Defiance and headed down to the planet. They landed a safe distance from the nearest black tower. Olivia stepped onto the planet's surface and looked around. The ground was covered in a strange, glassy material that crunched under her boots. This whole area has been transformed, she said into her comm. It's like the natural surface was melted and reformed. Her team spread out, taking readings. One of them called her over to a spot where the glassy ground had cracked open. Look at this, he said, pointing into the crack. There's something moving down there. Olivia peered into the darkness. Tiny points of light were moving beneath the surface, flowing like rivers of stars. Get a sample, she ordered, changing her earlier command. But be extremely careful. Back on the Defiance, Susan was getting worried. The scout team had been on the surface for nearly an hour. Any sign of Vordax activity? She asked Eric. Nothing yet, but... He paused, looking at his screen with concern. Captain, I'm detecting a large energy buildup from the towers. It's growing fast. Susan hit the comm button. Olivia, get your team back to the ship now. Something's happening with those towers. On the surface, Olivia heard the captain's warning. Everyone back to the ship, move. As they ran, the ground beneath them began to vibrate. The black towers were glowing with a purple light that seemed to pulse in rhythm. The scout ship lifted, off just as the first tower released a beam of energy straight up into the sky. The other towers followed, their beams meeting high in the atmosphere. What are they doing? Asked one of Olivia's team. I don't know, she replied, but I bet it's not good. When they returned to the Defiance, Olivia rushed to show Susan what they had found. The sample we collected contains microscopic machines, she explained, showing images on a screen. They're like tiny robots, smaller than cells, and they're communicating with each other. Susan frowned. Nanomachines? The Vordax don't use that kind of technology. Exactly, said Olivia. I don't think the Vordax built those towers. I think they found them just like we did. Before Susan could respond, Eric called out from his station. Captain, the beams from the towers have created some kind of opening in space. On the main screen, they could see a tear in the emptiness above the planet. It glowed with the same purple light as the towers. It's a portal, said Peter Walsh in a hushed voice. Those towers are creating a doorway to somewhere else. Or for something else to come through, added Susan grimly. Battle stations, prepare for possible contact. The crew rushed to their positions. The Defiance's weapons came online, ready to fire. From the portal, a single object emerged. It was small, about the size of a shuttle, and perfectly round. Its surface was smooth and black with no visible openings or features. "What is that?" asked Peter. "I don't know," said Susan, "but it's heading right for us." The object moved with impossible speed, covering the distance between the portal and the Defiance in seconds. It stopped just a few hundred meters from the ship. "No response to hails," reported Eric. "No signs of weapons powering up either." "Keep our disruptors ready," ordered Susan, "but hold fire unless I give the order." Suddenly, every screen on the bow bridge lit up with the same message. "We have waited." Susan stood up from her chair. "They're communicating with us." Another message appeared. "The Vordak sought to prevent our return. You have interfered." "Open a channel," Susan said to Eric. When he nodded, she spoke clearly. "This is Captain Susan Rivera of the Earthship Defiance. Who are you?" The reply came instantly. "We are the architects. This galaxy was ours before the rise of your kinds." Peter stepped forward. "If you're so ancient, where have you been all this time?" "Waiting. Watching. The Vordaks discovered one of our seeders. They learned of our planned return. They began destroying our activation nodes." Olivia looked at the images of the towers on the screen. "The Vordaks weren't expanding to conquer. They were trying to find and destroy these towers before they could be activated." "Is that true?" Susan asked the object. "The Vordaks feared our return. With reason." Susan exchanged glances with her officers. This changed everything they thought they knew about the Vordaks. "What are your intentions toward other life in this galaxy?" she asked carefully. There was a pause before the answer came. "This galaxy is our garden. We seeded it with life. We will reclaim it. Some species may be preserved. Others, removed." Susan's face hardened. "Earth and its allies will not accept being preserved or removed at your discretion. Your acceptance is not required." The object suddenly released a pulse of energy. It wasn't directed at the Defiance, but spread outward in all directions. "What was that?" demanded Susan. Eric checked his instruments. "It was some kind of signal, Captain, extremely powerful. It looks like it was sent to everywhere." Peter's face had gone pale. "They're waking up the other towers, all across the galaxy." Susan made a split-second decision. "Target that object with all quantum disruptors. Fire!" The Defiance unleashed its weapons. The invisible beams hit the black object squarely. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the object's surface began to ripple and distort. "It's working," said Eric excitedly. "Whatever they're made of, it's vulnerable to our disruption field." "Push it back toward the portal," ordered Susan. "Full power to forward thrusters." The Defiance moved forward, its disruptors keeping constant pressure on the alien object. Slowly, it began to move backward toward the still-open portal. "Captain," said Olivia urgently, "the sample we collected, the nanomachines, they're responding to the object's signal. They're trying to rebuild themselves into something larger." Susan didn't hesitate. "Eject the sample into space, then target it with a disruptor pulse." As the sample container was ejected, the black object suddenly accelerated, moving away from the ship at incredible speed. "It's retreating through the portal," shouted Eric. "Follow it," ordered Susan. "We can't let it escape to alert others." The Defiance pursued the object toward the purple tear in space. As they approached, Susan felt a moment of doubt. They had no idea what was on the other side. "All hands prepare for jump to unknown space," she announced. "We may be about to make first contact with something far older and more dangerous than the Vordaks." The Defiance entered the portal, leaving known space behind. The Defiance emerged from the portal into a space unlike anything the crew had ever seen. Instead of the blackness of normal space, they found themselves surrounded by swirling purple and blue energies that lit up the bridge through every window. "Where are we?" whispered Susan, standing slowly from her captain's chair. Eric checked his instruments, frowning deeply. "I can't tell, Captain. None of our navigation systems recognize this space. It's like we're between dimensions. The ship shuddered as energy waves washed over its hull. Warning lights flashed across several control panels. Hull integrity at 87% and dropping, reported one of the bridge officers. Whatever this place is, our ship wasn't designed for it. Susan made a quick decision. Find that object, we can't stay here long. The Defiance's sensors swept the strange environment around them. They detected the black sphere moving ahead of them, seemingly unaffected by the energy waves. There it is, said Eric. About 10,000 kilometers ahead and moving fast. Follow it, ordered Susan. But keep our distance, and keep the quantum disruptors ready. As they pursued the sphere deeper into this strange realm, the crew began to see massive shapes in the distance. They looked like cities floating in the energy clouds, impossibly large structures with no clear beginning or end. Are those their homes? Asked Peter Walsh, staring at the screens in wonder. Or their ships, said Olivia, who had returned to the bridge. Maybe they're both. The black sphere suddenly changed direction, heading straight toward one of the floating structures. The Defiance followed cautiously. As they got closer, they could see movement around the structure. Hundreds, maybe thousands, of objects similar to the sphere they had followed were moving in complex patterns. They have a fleet, said Susan grimly. A big one. Eric's console suddenly lit up with alerts. Captain, I'm detecting a massive energy buildup from the structure. I think they've spotted us. Before Susan could give an order, a beam of purple energy shot out from the structure, enveloping the Defiance. The ship shook violently, throwing crew members to the floor. Report, shouted Susan, picking herself up. Shields holding at 40%, replied Eric. But that was just a warning shot. They could have destroyed us. The main screen flickered to life, showing a message. You follow where you are not invited. Explain. Susan straightened her uniform and faced the screen. We followed your probe to understand your intentions. You threatened our galaxy. There was a pause before the reply came. Your galaxy? Presumptuous. The Vordax at least understood their place in the order. And what order is that? Asked Susan. As your servants or your livestock? Another pause. Neither, as caretakers. They maintained the balance until our return. Olivia stepped forward. That's why they were attacking other worlds. They were preventing anyone from finding your towers. Correct. They served well for millennia. Then they began to fear our return. They sought to delay it by destroying our activation nodes. Susan exchanged glances with her officers. So the Vordax weren't conquerors, they were guardians trying to protect the galaxy from you. Their motives are irrelevant. Our cycle of return cannot be stopped. Peter Walsh joined Susan at the center of the bridge. What exactly is this cycle of return? What do you plan to do with our worlds? The screen filled with images of planets being transformed, entire continents reshaped, oceans drained, atmospheres changed. We seed, we harvest, we reshape. It is the eternal cycle. Susan's face hardened. And the beings already living on those worlds. Some will be preserved as specimens. Most will be recycled into the new order. Susan turned to Eric. Send all of this back to Earth and the Council. They need to know what we're facing. Eric worked at his console. I can't establish a connection through the portal, Captain. We're cut off. You cannot warn them, came the message from the architects. The time of harvest approaches. Susan looked at Olivia. Is there any way the quantum disruptors could work against their entire structure? Olivia shook her head. Not at this scale. We'd need something much more powerful. Susan thought quickly. What about their connection? The Vordax had a hive mind. Do these architects have something similar? Olivia's eyes widened. They must. The way they communicate, the coordination of their ships. There has to be a central connection point. The screen flashed again. Your resistance is noted. Interesting but futile. You will be studied before recycling. The Defiance shuddered as another energy beam hit it, this one stronger than the last. They're trying to disable us, said Eric. Shields at 20%. Susan turned to Olivia. You said the Vordax were using the towers to prevent the architect's return. How? The towers are connection points, Olivia replied, thinking fast. Nodes in a network. If the Vordax were destroying them, they must have understood how the network functions. Susan nodded. And we have Vordax ships back home, ships with memories. Captain, interrupted Eric, I think I can create a small opening in the portal just enough to send a message back to Earth, but it won't last long. Do it, ordered Susan. Tell them everything we've learned, and tell them to access the Vordax ship memories to find out how to destroy the towers. While Eric worked on the message, Susan faced the screen again. You say your return cannot be stopped. Many races have believed that before meeting humans. Your species is young, primitive. You cannot comprehend our power. Maybe not, agreed Susan. But we're very good at finding weaknesses, even in enemies much stronger than us. Suddenly the ship rocked as a smaller vessel appeared through a new portal nearby. It was a Vordax scout ship, its organic hull covered in the familiar flowing patterns. What the... began Peter. The Vordax ship immediately fired at the architect structure, using weapons the humans had never seen before. The structure rippled as if in pain. Betrayal, flashed the message on the screen. The Guardians dare to attack directly. The energy around the Defiance suddenly lessened as the architects turned their attention to the Vordax ship. Susan saw their opportunity. Full power to engines, she ordered. Get us back to that portal. The Defiance turned and accelerated toward the tear in space that had brought them here. Behind them, more Vordax ships were appearing, engaging the architect vessels in battle. The Vordax are buying us time, said Peter in amazement. They must have been tracking us. As they approached the portal, Susan turned to her crew. What we've learned changes everything. The Vordax aren't our enemy. They've been fighting these architects for thousands of years. We need to get this information back to Earth and the Council. The Defiance slipped through the portal just as it began to collapse. They emerged back into normal space near the planet with the black towers. Portal is closed, reported Eric, and I managed to send the message. Earth should know what we're facing by now. Susan nodded. Set course for home, maximum speed. We need to prepare for war on a scale the galaxy has never seen. As the Defiance jumped away, the towers on the planet below began to pulse with energy once more. Across the galaxy, similar towers on dozens of worlds were activating, opening doorways. For the architects to return, the true battle for the galaxy was about to begin. The Defiance arrived back at Earth to find the planet surrounded by ships from across the galaxy. The Galactic Council had gathered the largest fleet in its history. Among them were Vordax vessels, their organic hulls now marked with symbols of alliance. In the main conference room of Earth's orbital station, Captain Susan Rivera addressed representatives from over 100 worlds. The room was packed with aliens of all shapes and sizes. At the center of the table sat a Vordax leader, its insect-like form towering over the other delegates. The architects are not simply invaders, Susan explained. They claim to have seeded life in our galaxy billions of years ago. They see us as their property to harvest when they choose. The Vordax leader, who called itself Cortal, spoke through a translator device. For thousands of years, my people have served as guardians against their return. We destroyed their activation towers when we found them. We prevented other species from discovering their technology. Ambassador William Carter nodded. Which explains why the Vordax attacked expanding civilizations. They weren't conquerors. They were containing the spread of knowledge about the architects. We failed in our duty, admitted Cortal. We believed fear would keep other species away from the towers. Instead, it united you against us. Hi, Chancellor Vorn, who had once dismissed Earth as primitive, now looked at Susan with respect. If Captain Rivera had not followed the architect probe, we might never have learned the truth until it was too late. Susan shook her head. It may still be too late. Our sensors show that towers across the galaxy are activating. The architects are coming through. Olivia Martinez stepped forward with a holographic display. We've studied the Vordax ship memories. They show that the towers form a network. Each one creates a portal for the architects to return, but they all connect to a central hub. She pointed to a location on the galaxy map. Here, in what we call the Boda's Void, a nearly empty region of space, this is where the Architect's main portal will open. Then that's where we make our stand, said Admiral Zixlar, who now commanded the combined galactic fleet. We must destroy the central hub before their main forces arrive. Olivia nodded. The Vordax records show that the quantum disruptors that worked against their ships can also affect Architect technology. But we'll need something much more powerful to destroy the hub. Susan looked at the Earth scientists who had developed the original disruption technology. Can we build a larger version? A weapon that could target the entire hub? The lead scientist, Frank Miller, nodded slowly. Theoretically, yes, but we'd need to get very close to the hub, and we'd need to channel more power than any ship could generate. Unless, said Olivia thoughtfully, we use the Architect's own energy against them. Susan understood immediately. The portals, they generate massive amounts of energy during activation. Exactly, said Olivia. If we could redirect that energy through a quantum disruptor, it would create a cascading failure through their entire network, finished Frank. But someone would have to deliver the device directly to the hub during activation. The room fell silent as everyone realized what this meant. A suicide mission. Susan stood up straight. The Defiance will deliver it. Captain, protested Peter Walsh. The ship wouldn't survive. Most of the crew will evacuate before the final approach, said Susan firmly. I'll take a volunteer skeleton crew for the final run. 3 days later, the combined fleet of the galaxy gathered at the edge of the Boda's Void. Over 5,000 ships from every known species, including 300 Vordax vessels, prepared for battle. At the center of the formation, the Defiance had been modified. Its entire rear section was now occupied by the largest quantum disruptor ever built. The device would capture energy from the Architect's portal and turn it back against them. On the bridge, Susan looked at her remaining crew. Only 20 had stayed, volunteers all. Eric Johnson sat at his tactical station while Olivia Martinez monitored the disruptor from engineering. The first wave of Architect ships is coming through smaller portals throughout the region, reported Eric. Our fleet is engaging them. Outside, the battle had begun. Thousands of the black spheres were appearing through dozens of smaller portals. The galaxy's ships fired on them with weapons modified with quantum disruption technology. The central hub is starting to activate, said Olivia, watching her screens. Energy levels are rising. Susan opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, move to defensive positions. The Defiance is beginning its approach. The massive Allied fleet formed a protective corridor, allowing the Defiance to move toward the center of the void. Ahead, a swirling mass of purple energy was growing. The main portal was forming. Hub activation at 60%, reported Olivia. Our disruptor is charging from the ambient energy. The Defiance pushed forward, taking fire from Architect spheres that tried to stop it. The Allied ships provided cover, destroying any that got too close. Shields failing, said Eric as the ship shuddered from multiple hits. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Seal those sections, ordered Susan. Keep us on course. As they neared the center of the void, a massive structure began to emerge from the growing portal. It dwarfed even the largest ships in the eye. Galaxy, a city-sized complex of black material and pulsing energy. That's their command center, said Olivia. The heart of their network. A message flashed across the Defiance's screens. Your resistance is impressive but futile. The cycle cannot be broken. Susan ignored it. Status of the disruptor? Fully charged, replied Olivia. But we need to get closer, right to the edge of the portal. Susan nodded. All remaining crew, this is your last chance to reach the escape pods. No one moved. Very well, said Susan with a proud smile. Take us in, full speed. The Defiance accelerated toward the massive portal. The ship groaned under the strain as it pushed through waves of energy that grew stronger the closer they got. Portal activation at 90%, reported Olivia. Disruptor ready to fire on your command. The Architect command structure was now half emerged from the portal, its impossible size making the Defiance look like a toy in comparison. Another message appeared. What do you hope to accomplish, humans? You cannot destroy us. Susan stood from her chair one last time. We're not trying to destroy you, we're trying to send you back where you came from. She looked at Olivia and nodded. Fire the disruptor. Olivia activated the device. The Defiance shuddered as energy poured from its bow, a concentrated beam of quantum disruption that struck the center of the portal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the portal began to collapse in on itself. The energy flow reversed, pulling the architect command structure back into the void between dimensions. It's working, shouted Eric. All across the galaxy, the towers are overloading, reported Olivia, reading incoming data. The network is collapsing. The Defiance was being pulled toward the collapsing portal. Susan made no attempt to escape. They had known this was a one-way mission. It's been an honor, she said to her crew. Just as the ship reached the edge of the portal, a Vordax vessel appeared beside them. Before Susan could react, a beam of energy surrounded the Defiance. What's happening? She asked as the bridge filled with light. They're teleporting us, said Eric in amazement. The Vordax are saving us. In a flash of light, the bridge crew found themselves on the Vordax vessel. Through the viewport, they watched as the Defiance was pulled into the collapsing portal. The quantum disruptor continued to fire until the ship vanished from this dimension. With a final surge of energy, the portal closed completely. Across the galaxy, all the towers went dark. 1 month later, a new Galactic Council chamber was completed. Unlike the old one, this chamber had Earth at its center. Representatives from all species, including the Vordax, gathered to sign a new Treaty of Alliance. Admiral Zixlar, who had once mocked Earth's single ship, now stood before the assembly. For centuries, we believed ourselves to be the height of civilization. We dismissed newcomers like humanity as primitives. We feared the Vordax as mindless conquerors. We were wrong on both counts. He gestured to where Susan Rivera stood with her surviving crew. A single human ship showed us that true strength lies not in numbers or ancient technology, but in understanding, adaptation, and courage. High Chancellor Vorn presented Susan with a crystal sphere containing light from 100 worlds. The galaxy will never forget what Earth has done. What began as terror at the Vordax threat has ended with a new age of cooperation. Susan accepted the gift with a humble nod. She looked out at the assembled representatives of a united galaxy and thought of the single ship that had changed everything. The architects may return someday, she said. But when they do, they won't find divided worlds easy to harvest. They'll find a galaxy standing together. As she spoke, engineers across a dozen worlds were already designing new ships based on the Defiance. Not just warships, but vessels of exploration and cooperation. The age of fear was over. A new age of unity had begun, and it had all started with a single ship.